Well, good afternoon to most people, I would imagine, and welcome to another Lunch and Learn webinar sponsored by NARSA and IDEA. This is a topic I think that is of great importance to our industry and every skilled labor industry that's presently doing business. It's about finding, attracting, and retaining skilled workers, keeping a labor force, attracting a labor force. Before we get started, we want to let everyone know that this is a panel discussion, and you will be able to ask questions real time. You can raise your hand, or you can bring up the chat box at the bottom of your screen and post a question in chat, and we'll try to get to you as soon as possible during this discussion. I'd like to take a minute and thank our sponsor, Johnson. It can be done with Johnson's. For decades, Johnson has served the heat transfer industry by providing high quality solders, industrial fluxes for repair, and a line of shop supplies and hand tools. So thank you very much to Johnson Manufacturing for supporting this webinar series. So I'd like to have each one of our panelists today introduce themselves. Bobby, why don't we start with you?
Hi, everybody. My name is Bobby Duran. I'm NARSA IDEA president and owner of Cooling Systems Caribe in Puerto Rico. I started with a shop in New Jersey, and about 5 years ago, exited out of that business and entered into Cooling Systems Caribe, which we are a distributor, manufacturer of copper brass radiators and completes and cores and whatnot, mostly for the industrial space. The labor shortage history is hitting us as well. Puerto Rico is part of the United States, in case anybody didn't know. So people here were subject to all the benefits that were given during the pandemic. What we found is, it's been a challenge. Wages have gone up, which I'm not totally opposed to that. I kind of support, people doing better, and but finding quality help has been a challenge. And I would love to learn how other people are dealing with it and share kind of what we've done in our environment to overcome this challenge.
Bobby, thank you so much. Jamie, moving on around my screen.
Hi, my name is Jamie Irvin. I'm the host of the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I've been in the trucking industry since I started my career in 1998, and I've had the opportunity to work at every level. Started off in manufacturing, worked in parts distribution. From 2009 to 2016, I ran a contracting business where I exited in 2016. So I'm very familiar with what it takes to bring on skilled labor, train them in your systems, and be able to try to keep and retain good people in your business. And now I run the Heavy Duty Parts Report and work as a consultant to the truck parts industry. Very happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Aaron Picozzi, happy to be here. Very excited to talk about this. I am the president of American Diesel Training Centers, which is a technical training school centered out of Columbus, Ohio. We service the entire US, and really what we focus on is recruiting, vetting, and training entry-level technicians in the heavy-duty truck and trailer space. With that, I think we have a lot of the same problems. Not everybody's waking up every morning and says, hey, I'm gonna be a diesel mechanic, right? So we gotta go out there and find them. We've had a lot of success over the last 4 years, putting about 1,000 students through, working at all parts of the industry. So I'm hoping to share some of our tips and some of the bruises we've developed along the way to help find you all some really good talent from outside the industry.
And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Taylor. I'm the executive director of NARSA and IDEA. I was a radiator shop owner and radiator distributor. Sold my company the end of 2016. I will say this, I think that over the 36 years that I was in business, that we had produced over 400 W-2s. So I can definitely, I think speak when, have a conversation about employees with this group of people. I'd just like to start off saying that we've been having this discussion for several years amongst some of us, and it's becoming even more important. And I think that recent events, the pandemic, has exacerbated this problem. I kind of found this slide interesting, and I just wanted to kind of set the mood for what we're up against, or what business owners today in the skilled trades are up against. And you can look here and you can see that 3.2 million workers have left the labor force. Now, this is the total number of workers. And then you can come down here and see that we've had an excess of retirees over trend, which means that the normal people that would have retired, that was increased either due to the pandemic or certain working conditions. And then you have here 2.7 million workers are earning more on benefits than they earned on their job. Now, that hasn't created the whole problem. This problem probably started with a big push into higher education back in the 70s. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go around to our panelists, and we're going to have them talk about what they think, kind of has allowed this skilled technician shortage kind of to take hold, and why it's able to continue, and how is this going to impact business, especially businesses that rely on a skilled labor force. So, Aaron, let's start off with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit on a few really important points, one of which is the conventional education system. I myself was a wayward young man who had to go to college. I'm 34, so I'm a millennial. Don't hold it against me. But my generation gets targeted for a lot of these problems, and I'll take some of the blame. But what I found is I really had no choice. I was told I have to go to school. I have to. That's the way out. That's the way that you better yourself. And in so many ways, they're correct. But I know for me, it took me a little bit to get through that. And my first dip in the toe in college wasn't the right time for me. And I went out and I enlisted. Joined the Coast Guard, and I became a machinery technician, which is how I cut my teeth. Turning wrenches for about 7 or 8 years on anything that moves, right? So I saw the big diesel, all that stuff, and worked on everything. That gave me a skill set that no one could ever take away. And I think if more folks knew that there were opportunities out there to get a skill set, to get in there without being buried in debt, without giving up a ton of your life to go do something else, they would take those angles. And I think that is what we've done at American Diesel, is really kind of turn that education on its head. And we did so as a startup. A lot of you all can do so within your own shops, not even using services like ours. So I'm excited to talk about some of that and what we can do to help alleviate this generational problem out there.
So I'm a little bit ahead of Aaron. I just turned 42. When I was finishing up high school in the late 90s, there was a massive push to put kids into the computer sciences. And I do remember thinking to myself, if every kid I know, both on the Canadian side of the border and my friends on the US side of the border in the state of Maine, if every kid I know in our small little rural communities, in some of the urban centers, are going off to university to go into computer sciences, I said, there's got to be a supply demand issue, that there's going to be a problem. And so I relocated to the West Coast. And at the age of 18, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And to be honest, the massive debt that I would incur by entering into a 4-year program was a little scary to me. And I was accepted to several universities, and I just remember wanting to put a pause on it. And so I went to work, and I don't know if I found the truck parts industry or if the truck parts industry found me, but at the age of 18, I went to work for a manufacturer. And I remember thinking to myself, there's a huge opportunity here, because every person I see at that point in the late 90s was kind of looking like I do right now, where the gray was just starting to come in. And I thought, there's no young guys or women in this industry at all. This is going to be a great opportunity for me. So I just kept following that path. And I was fortunate enough to work for a manufacturing company that wanted to invest in young talent. So they sent me to school. I took training to become a machinist to work in that manufacturing division, but standing at a machine all day wasn't really for me. So I took the management path, and I worked for that company for 10 years, and they sent me on several different occasions to get ongoing upgrades to my education. So I really got a chance to apprentice and learn as I went along, and I think that was a fantastic thing for me. And I'm very grateful for it now, because once I entered into the world of business ownership, I often say, when I started my first business and it failed after 4 months, and I started my second business a couple months later, and we exited successfully in 6 years, I went from startup to M&A, and I got my master's in business. And so it's been a wonderful experience for me, but I really see the 20 plus years I've been in the industry, I've just seen us as an industry fall farther and farther behind. And so few young people got to have the experience I did. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's been my experience over the last 20 plus years.
No, thanks, Jamie. You know, I'm a graduate of HKU. So on to you, Bobby. The impact of the skilled labor shortage, and you know, how do you see this, and what impact is this going to have?
Sorry, hey Mark, can you hear me? I cut out a little bit there.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, I kind of look at this from a slightly different perspective. I think in the radiator industry, we've all seen shops that that were not that had no successor. And I feel like growing up, I graduated high school in '97. It wasn't even an option to not think about college. And what I began to realize, though, were that a lot of my friends that went to liberal arts schools or other schools took on huge amounts of debt, while some of our friends that went into the trades were already buying houses when they were 25 and 26 because they were welders, or they were a union carpenter or a union electrician. And that kind of opened my eyes. But to my point about the shops, I mean, I almost feel like in our industry, at one point, it was almost as if shop owners didn't want their children to get into what they perceived to be a dirty business, and they wanted them to be a professional. And I think that's not right for everybody. For me, I really found an industry that I loved. I had been on Wall Street, and I came back to the radiator industry because I loved it. But I definitely feel as someone that, I guess I'm the last of the Gen X, I would be. I felt that we were highly encouraged to view the trades as somehow second best to going into the college route. And I think what we're seeing now is two things. One, that's not necessarily true. And two, we're reaping the what we sowed back, in the 70s and 80s.
So thank you, Bobby. So I've recently listened to and watched a podcast that Mike Rowe did. And Mike Rowe has a nonprofit foundation because he also is very aware of this problem, and he's trying to do something about the skilled labor shortage. But and he, like myself, he is a Baltimore born and bred man. And Mike Rowe talked about when he was in the guidance counselor's office in 1977, there was a poster on the wall, and it said, "Work smarter, not harder," was the caption at the bottom of the poster. And it showed a college graduate on one side, and it showed a guy wearing coveralls, and he had a shovel in his hand on the other side. And this was the push that was being made with our education, educational institutions at that time, to push everybody into a 4-year degree. That the only way that you can have success is by having this 4-year degree. There's two sides. This is not a bash against higher education, But when you look at the cost of higher education, which I think I read a number, I wrote it down, it's around $137,000 now for a 4-year degree. A good training program like a vocational institute to learn a trade will cost you about $33,000. So, we've pushed everybody into these 4-year degrees, higher education, burdened them with debt. The average starting salary is around, for a college graduate, I think is in the 40,000 range. And you have to live off of that and then turn around and pay back your student debt. So this has helped, a lot of trends over the years have helped to, create and also then continue the dilemma that we're going to be really be in, because it's going to be, in order to grow your business, in order to prosper, have any type of expansion, to have any type of good customer service, you need people to do that. And if, the radiator industry or the truck repair or welders or whatever, you got to have people to be able to do that. So it's up to us to try to get this message out and create this awareness for people about these industries and what the potential is. Do you think that there's any other historical factors in business that have led to this shortage? Just trying to get some more background. Bob, we'll start with you. Do you think that there's anything else that historically, over the last 20 to 30 years that has helped us get to where we are at today?
I mean, from my perspective, besides a major focus away from, let's say, just the way the Germans do it, where apprenticeships were very important, vocational schools were very important. Away from that, I mean, your generation is the baby boom generation. They didn't call it baby boom for nothing. There were a lot of you. And that's also an issue where an older society is less of us. And if we pushed everybody to go towards a 4-year education track versus a vocational trades track, well, we have a lot less people and we're pushing most of them towards one set. Eventually, we were going to have a problem, and we're seeing it right now.
Jamie, same question.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, we have a really interesting cross section here on the screen right now. So, Mark, you're the baby boom generation. There's 25% more of your counterparts than there are for Bobby and I, and it's going to take until 2030 before the millennials, Aaron's generation, are all of seniority enough to take over leadership roles. So we've got this big problem where over the next 8 years, and we've been experiencing this now for probably 10 years behind us, but baby boomers are exiting faster and faster and faster, and there's not enough guys and gals in Bobby and I's age group to replace the amount of people leaving. And so there's that issue. And then when you combine that with the fact that we just, as an industry, especially in truck parts, especially in that vocation, we just haven't done a good enough job of explaining and articulating the benefits of being in our industry. Everybody in the industry knows how amazing it is, but it's kind of like one of those best kept secrets. We haven't done a great job telling enough people about it. So the reality is that the demographics are working against us, and this isn't just our industry that's being impacted by this. This is a global trend, and so the reality is that we're not going to fix this just by throwing more people at the issue, because there aren't enough people. So I think historically speaking, we have these trends that were set in motion decades ago. And now it's up to us to get innovative and to dig down deep to find solutions that are going to be able to leverage every advantage we can find, whether it be from technology or disruptive ways of thinking, in order for us to move forward. The good news is that I think as we continue our conversation, we're going to talk about some of the strategies that will help us to actually successfully move forward. Can we solve this industry-wide? Maybe not, but can we help NARSA and IDEA members solve this problem? Yeah, I think we can.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Jamie. Aaron.
This is great. I could talk about this all day. This is really what we focus on. And I wish I coined this phrase, but what we're experiencing right now, they refer to as the silver tsunami. All of these folks retiring, they're getting out, the gray hairs are leaving, and we have nothing we can do to
easy.
really. Sorry, it's not my term. Not my term. I'm just passing it on. But I'm not too far behind you. So that's what we're seeing. And so I always talk to companies about this, and I say there's two types of problems. There are fires and there's rust. And everyone's real focused on the fires, but the rust is just as important. And so we didn't have the input years ago to have folks gain that experience and move up into management. And you can't surge experience. No matter what you do, you can't surge it. You just have to let it happen. And so what we see is in our industry and the trades just at large, we have an input problem. There aren't enough people going in. So we've already crossed the bridge that we're in real trouble in the senior leadership arena as folks continue to retire. But we need to fix this now by getting people into the industry so we're not dealing with this in another 20 years. I think that's where that focus needs to be. And to kind of shift the paradigm away from that is going to be really our responsibility. Everyone on this call, everybody in the trades, you have to let people know and remove those barriers to say, hey, come on into the industry. We're going to train you up. We're going to get you work and you're going to have a great career. That's what we all need to be doing.
And Aaron, I think that you really hit on something there is that, businesses will focus or allocate a certain amount of time and resources to doing sales. And I think now it's become pretty evident, at least to me, that not only are we going to have to dedicate resources to doing sales to grow our business, we're going to have to dedicate a substantial amount of resources to recruitment of future workers. Because if we don't do this as small businessmen, and I say we, I'm still in the business, the fact that I run this trade association, but without companies and growing companies and new companies, there is no trade associations. That's why I say we. So the businesses are going to have to take and make a conscious effort to become salespeople to young people. How do we do that, Bobby?
Wow, that's why we got Jamie and Aaron on here, because I want to learn like everybody else. What we found, I'm in a bit of a different situation because what we find in Puerto Rico, we've had a massive depopulation prior to everything. So Puerto Rico has been sort of in an economic crisis since 2006 for various reasons. We went from a population of approximately 4.2 million to somewhere a little over 3 million right now. And a lot of the people we are losing are the young people. A lot of brain drain going on. So that's a big problem. They're leaving to take jobs in Texas. They're leaving to take jobs in Ohio. They're leaving to take jobs in New Jersey and Florida. So we have to keep that in mind at all times. However, what we found is we're in a rural area, and I used to always rag on my father. Why would you find a factory and put it in a town where the only place is a chicken processing plant, and we're an hour and a half from the metro area? But what we found is in the rural areas that there's still a lot of people that know how to work with their hands. They've been wrenching on their dirt bike since they were a kid. They've been messing on with their dad's Jeep. They've been messing with their uncle's flatbed tow truck for a long time. So we really tried to focus on that. And like many businesses, and I'm sure on this call, what we've done is we've partnered with some of the local tech schools to have them say, hey, look, we have spots. Send us your people. We need CNC operators. We need guys that are good with their hands. We need welders. Send them over here. And a lot of them have to do their practical training with us. So what we found is we've been able to keep a lot of those kids, and we've gone from a mindset of let's find someone with a lot of experience to let's bring young people with good attitudes that we can train our way with our core values and our mission focus, and that's been very successful. And then the other thing we do, like many others here, is referral. If we have a good employee, we then encourage them to bring other people. And the way we do that is we've instituted a bonus that if, they bring someone and they last 6 months and we like them, we give them an extra $300 per person they bring. So that's been quite successful. So for us, we haven't had quite as severe a challenge as I'm hearing from a lot of my colleagues on the mainland, but we've had to get a lot more aggressive and a lot more creative to attract and keep talent to maintain a growing business.
Great, thanks. Jamie, I know that you and I have had this discussion before about you had your company and you were able to sell your company, and about the things that you did with the people that were working with you at the time, and what it was like at the very end then when you sold, and your processes and procedures. And I'll let you get into all that because I think it's a fascinating story. So.
Yeah, so there's two things I want people to really understand about what I did that was successful. So I started the business that I exited in 2016. I started in 2009 on the heels of the Great Recession caused by the housing bubble crisis. And I started this current business. It's a media company with the Heavy Duty Parts Report and my consulting work that I do basically in the midst of a global pandemic. And in both situations, in those early years, there was the first thing that I did was I focused on my systems. And I don't mean like my IT systems, although that plays a part in it. I mean, how do you do what you do at every single level? And not from the leadership down, but from the entry level job up. And as soon as I systemized those entry level positions, I was then able to recruit people who had zero experience, but to Bobby's point, great profile fits, personality wise and attitude. And what that enabled me to do is it enabled me to access a group of people who at that time in 2009 were desperate for a job. And they were, I remembered the interview process, and it was like, we're in contracting. This is an exterior building cleaning company in the West Coast. And they're like, I have no experience. And it's like, I don't care. I don't want you to have experience. I'm not looking for someone with experience. I'm looking for someone who's going to be a great fit. Here's what the company is about. Here's what we're trying to do. Do you want to be a part of that? Yes, great. We'll hire you. We'll train you with our system. And I did that with an exterior building cleaning company. I've done that as an employee with parts distribution and manufacturing companies. And I've done it in now my consulting and my media company, where my audio engineer is a carpenter. He's a 22-year-old carpenter who got laid off because of the pandemic. I hired him, taught him my system, and now he's an audio visual engineer. So I mean, this can be done. If that doesn't prove that this process can be applied to any business, I don't know what would convince you, because you couldn't get two more radically different situations. But once I got my systems in place, I could start to recruit people from unique places and tap into different areas where people were really looking for jobs. And right now, there are people who are looking for jobs. There are people who have been displaced by this pandemic. And if you've got the systems in place, then you can start putting recruiting strategies in place to attract those people. And what ended up happening for me is that, just like to Bobby's point, once I found some good people that were fitting into my business and my systems back in 2009, 2010, 2011, after about 2011, I didn't ever have to recruit anymore, because we paid people very well. We gave them a direct path for moving up. We also encouraged them to introduce us to new groups of people in different communities that perhaps my wife and I weren't, have access to. And by doing that, over time, we were able to fill our pipeline. And I remember competitors saying, like, how are you doing that? And the main reason was because we had repeat systems and we had a great environment. We paid people very well, and we gave them a very clear path where they could move up, move up, move up, to the point where many of my past employees in the contracting business, when I sold in 2016, we gave them an opportunity to buy out their equipment. So we had a truck operator position, and we gave them the opportunity to buy out and set themselves up as 1099 contractors, to use an American term. Canada, it's a little different, but the same general idea. And the people who didn't want to do that, many of them still work for the company that I sold to all these years later, because that company had no systems and bought us for our systems. So this is the approach that I've taken. I've applied it to contracting businesses, manufacturing, distribution, media companies, and it really is universal. These principles do work, but it takes stepping out of your comfort zone, especially on the recruitment side, and bringing people into your business who maybe you never would have thought you would bring them in. And as long as you've got good systems to manage all of that, then you will find the people that will fit your culture and will help you build your business. And I think at the end of the day, you got to share with them, if your business does well, you've got to show them a path where they're going to succeed as well. I think that is absolutely critical, because I've heard, in my role as the heavy duty parts report, I get to talk to a lot of people, and I've done many episodes about the technician shortage, and I get these floods of comments filled with expletives, and it's just pain pouring out of technicians who are diesel techs, who are saying, they're not being taken care of. They feel like they're being taken advantage. They feel like they're underpaid. They feel like they've been promised, advancement opportunities, and then it never came. And then you see them leaving to go, I had one, he left to be a bicycle mechanic because he can make like $120 an hour as a bike mechanic. Another one is putting together furniture and appliances for a large retail organization that just subcontracts, and we lost that technician out of the trucking industry. And it's a tragedy to think that we're losing people when we're so desperate to find people in the first place. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, that's great, Jamie. I think that culture plays a huge role in how successful you are at bringing in people. Aaron, talk to us about what you're involved in, because your involvement in this industry right now is really directly related to supplying, labor to the trucking industry. I mean, getting people placed at an entry level position. Tell us about what you're doing, how you're doing it. Let's start with why you got into this, or how this started, and then what it is that you're doing and how it's going. Because I was really fascinated yesterday when we talked for the first time to find out how successful you were at this.
Sure. Yeah, happy to do so. And I'll keep it brief. Our company was founded in 2017. Our two co-founders, Tim Spurlock and Chris Ellis, really identified a problem. Chris Ellis was a career Kenworth guy working at the plant in Chillicothe, had done everything on a truck and knows everything about trucks, right? That's his bread and butter. Tim sold educational publishing material. So to every big trade school you could think of, he was out there selling that material, getting all the courses out there. And he noticed a few things. He noticed that the classes were empty. As we all know, no one's going into the trade schools. Number two, they were training to a level that was disingenuous for what that individual will be doing. So we would see guys and gals coming out of these programs where they think, hey, I'm not doing oil changes or changing tires. I'm going to work on a NASCAR team because that's what I'm told, right? So I'm going to give up 18 months of my life, and I'm going to pay $45,000 in student loans, which will end up being a lot more down the line. And then there we go. My career is set. So we found it to be a broken system. And the company was founded really on identifying what industry needs in an entry-level technician, finding folks based on attitude and aptitude, getting them trained up quickly where they can generate revenue for a company and be a value add, and get them in the door as quickly as possible. You learn things as you go. You learn a lot, but let's get you to that baseline so you're a help in that industry. And this echoes so well to what you all are doing, because I would imagine that most of you say, okay, I'm a radiator shop. I need to find someone who knows how to work on radiators and fix radiators. Well, guess what? That's a finite, limited pool. And the only place you're finding them is probably from stealing them down the road. So let's avoid that. Because now what's going to happen is you pay him $1 more. Guess what? He's going to go work somewhere else for another $1 more when he has a bad day because you guys are short staffed and now the manager's got an attitude, right? Let's avoid that. So we wanted to build this grow your own model. And that's just one part of it. Identifying that talent's the real other part that we can get into as well. But you all can find these folks that are in what we call high effort, low skill, low wage sectors. They're busting their hump, they're working hard. And by removing the barriers of time and cost to an education, and I'm not even talking about a formal education, develop those core competencies that you need for that entry-level trainee and devote some time to doing so. I'm not asking you guys to go out there and stand up your own training school. That's probably not what needs to happen right now. But what will happen is that you need to draw talent in and get them up to a production level where they can bring in some cash, they feel good, and they have a pathway, as Jamie mentioned, to continue to grow in this industry. And so my soapbox, hopefully a little bit smaller, and I got through it pretty quick.
Well, thank you, Aaron. I know that I think it's Jamie had talked about a personality profile assessment.
This is an important piece to the puzzle because when you're hiring people at the lowest skill level possible for entry-level positions to build up your base of people and then to have them grow throughout your organization, one of the most important things is to identify what personality traits are required to do a great job in this specific role. And one of the easiest ways to kind of describe that is if you take a really extroverted, outgoing person who is high in assertiveness, high pace characteristic, low detail orientation, and is really motivated, and then you put them in an office where they have to work by themselves on highly detail oriented work, and they never get to have any social experience during their working hours, what you will find is you'll find something called behavior. It is not behavior adaptability. It is where their behavior is
They're frustrated.
Well, they're frustrated. Yeah, there's a technical term for it, and it's just eluding me right now. Avoidance behavior. They will engage in what's called avoidance behavior, and what that will be is they will make up all kinds of reasons why they need to get up out of that office, get out with the other staff, have a conversation. And in their minds, it's a legitimate reason. And you're saying, no, get back in there and do your job, right? So there's a disconnect between the personality profile of the person and the job that they're being asked to do. So if you find someone without the technical training and education and experience, but they have the right profile for a very technical, detail-oriented job, and you are then able to train them to do that and provide them with the education and experience they need, what you're going to find is that their aptitude for it is going to be high. They're going to learn how to do it very quickly. They're going to love what they do. And then also you are going to understand where that person can go in your organization. One of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of companies make is that if someone is very proficient at doing the job, then they suddenly find themselves becoming the manager of the people doing that job. That is not necessarily the right direction for that person. So it's really about understanding all those entry-level positions, what kind of personality is required, but then with those individual people, then what else in their personality will allow them to move and in what direction. And so in my organization, in my company, we had some people who stayed on the tools and they became like technical experts. So they started entry level and they stayed on the tools and they never got off the tools. We had other people who learned the business and within 6 months were showing aptitude for managing entire job sites for me. And they just needed a little more training, a little more experience, and then they could move up into that, what we call like a truck operator position. And then we had other people who left the tools very quickly and we moved them into administrative positions. And so it's all about understanding the people. And I think the first step is always identifying the profile for the job, and then finding people who have a matching profile to put into those jobs. And if you can get that done, and there are personality profile assessment tools, like I personally use one by Concord Consulting that's called the Profile Performance System, but there are others out there and they fundamentally all do the same thing. They measure people in a scientific way. And I think that that's an important piece that's largely misunderstood by many people in our industry.
Jamie, do you excuse me, Mark, do you use
No, go
any or Aaron, do you use any proficiency testing services like just like basic skills? I used to use one a while ago, but could you I don't know if you use them, and if you do, could you recommend, you know, some of that to our listeners?
So I don't, because I build the system for my business the way I want it built. And then I create the proficiency inside of those systems. And so I don't want to rely on any outside help, because quite honestly, very few businesses and people do this. So for me, it was never an issue of proficiency. It was, I build the system. I know exactly how to do the job. I've broken it down step by step by step by step. And then I assessed that job and said, well, what personality would be required to really succeed in this environment? And so for me, it was all about personality, because I was creating the proficiency test within the system that I was building, but that was just me.
We do not use any kind of aptitude test in terms of that. We really want to feel out their background. We found that a lot of folks that want to enter into these kind of industries are not very good test takers, and that is not directly reflective of what's going on. And also the roles that they're working in are dynamic. Maybe those soft skills of customer interaction will bode better for the position that they're going to land than the real extreme technical stuff. We find that it's very hard to get that full package player who can do it all. So let's honestly assess them over our 5-week training program and get them into the role where they can grow into that good position. That's normally how we do it, rather than setting up some of those barriers up.
So I think, you know, I have a friend of mine who would like to ask the panel a question. So go ahead. We're here from Wayne Phillips now from Canada.
Hi, thanks, Mark. Yeah, Aaron, you said it. I think I could talk for a week on this one. And it's something that we worked a ton on. As a matter of fact, I just came back from a 4-hour leadership training course where we were specifically talking about hiring, training, and I mean, there's just a lot to it. We've been very fortunate here that we've had a lot of people from all over the world, you know, come to Canada to, you know, to start a new life. And but with COVID, that's really slowed down. So there really isn't as many people coming into this country as there was. So there isn't as many people looking to get into an industry, let alone the rad business, as there was. But nonetheless, our next step is probably going to these developing countries and actually trying to find the skill sets that we're looking for. I think it's the same in the US as it is in Canada. The first generation people that come to this country, they're hungry and looking to start a new life, and they're aggressive. And the longer they stay in this country, the less aggressive they get. And that's just a nice way of saying they get lazy. But anyway, that's our next step. We want to go abroad, and we haven't done it yet, but we're considering it. And I'm just curious if any on the panel have done that.
Hello, Wayne, fellow Canadian. I in my contracting business, we did go abroad, and we found, and I'm not going to mention like what country or anything like that, because it almost doesn't matter. But what we found was that once we got into the communities and we had a really great system, the word of mouth became so powerful that we created pipelines of people coming from those countries. And it was a great experience for us. And at one point, you know, our company was so diverse that really, like, my wife and I were a minority in our own company, and we thought that was the greatest thing in the world. And one thing that we found for retention was if we just created a job for them, we sometimes struggled to keep people. But if we gave them a path towards their ultimate goals and what they were trying to build inside of their lives, that was the important part. And so we found it almost like a 50-50 split. We had some people who were just employees through and through, and that's all they wanted. And that was great. And we had other people who really wanted to move up and create a platform for their extended family to then come to our country and build upon that. And what we did is, instead of fighting that, we set up mechanisms to move people into positions where they could do that. And as a collective group, we became stronger. And so in my particular business, it was all about getting contractors and subcontracting. If I was doing that in another business, then, like, for example, manufacturing or parts distribution, then maybe I would think about setting up maybe like sister cousin, like, or cousin industries or things like that, where you would eventually give them a path where they could go and start their own company, but then it was a partner to yours and everybody got stronger as you went along. So for me, it was about a 50-50 split, but it was all about that clear path. And there's nothing that causes people to quit sooner than promising them a clear path and then putting roadblocks in their way. So how do you remove those roadblocks and really make that whole thing work in a positive forward motion? And I mean, it takes time. It took me many years for me to build that, and people understood that as we moved along. But I kept them in the loop of what we were doing, and I kept true to my word. If I promised they were getting something, they got it.
Well, in New Jersey, as Wayne has visited when I had my shop in New Jersey. In New Jersey, I mean, it's super multicultural. And what I found was, I could name a few businesses offhand where you would go there and most of the workforce was Brazilian. And not only were they Brazilian, they came from the same small town, from the same state in Brazil, because they had this pipeline going to Brazil, and they would recommend each other. Another company a friend of mine had was it was a large recycling company. A huge portion of his employees were from the Cape Verde Islands, and it was just the same sort of pipeline. I think things are getting a little bit more challenging with that, and that's always been sort of the pressure relief valve has been the immigrant labor force in our country, and I think that's certainly going to be a major part of it, because eventually we're not going to have. We need to recruit good, high quality labor, much like the tech industry has been doing for a long time with their H-1B visas and whatnot.
Mr. David Benvenu.
Hey, how y'all doing? I firmly believe from, experience, and I was a diesel mechanic. I worked around blue collar workers for 40 something years. And I really believe that we can't be what we want to be, that we have to find out what we're supposed to be and find our way around. And I know that because, I was raised on a sugarcane plantation. My grandfather had 6 sons. I had 40 first cousins that were boys in the second generation. And I really believe that mechanical aptitude is something that it has something to do with heredity or being born that way. I mean, if I had to go to college, I would be in trouble. But I never made D's and F's since I finished high school, because I like what I'm doing, and I was able to do it well and work with my hands. So my thing is, I have a brother 15 years younger than me. He's a millwright and a machinist and mechanic and stuff. And his son's 16 years old, and he's always working on lawnmowers, go-karts, all kind of stuff. That's the way I grew up. And I mean, even my little grandson that's 28 months old, I watch him, and he's into all of that stuff, the dipsticks and the checking air and tires. And so I guess my question is, when I got ready when I was a senior in high school, and I went to the guidance counselor's office, and she said, David, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I kind of looked at the floor, and she said, what do you want to be? I said, well, I really want to be a diesel mechanic, but my daddy wants me to go to college. And then she pulled out all these aptitude tests that the Army and Coast Guard and all gave at that time to try to locate people with mechanical aptitude to go in those things. And all those scores were so high. She said, David, you go home and tell your daddy that your mechanical aptitude, that you're supposed to be a diesel mechanic. And I did. And within a week, I was enrolled at Nashville Auto Diesel College. So, I was just wondering and nowadays, I was raised down the Shell Road on the sugarcane farm, and, always had a big yard and all kind of stuff to play with. I think nowadays, if somebody has that mechanical aptitude in their system, but they're from a broken home where they might live 1 week with their mom in an apartment and live with their daddy somewhere, and they don't get to experience and play with their daddy outside in the workshop and all that stuff. What are the things you can do to maybe locate or even get the local schools to do something to get these locate these kids, but to try to pick them out of the crowd?
I think that's a great question, David. And I think this gets back to the way that what we do in NARSA and IDEA, right? When we get together and we exchange ideas, and what's the term? The word just escapes me. Networking, right? So, how many of us as business owners network with our schools, with our local schools, with our high schools, with those guidance counselors? You just, I know a good friend of ours, well known in the industry, Mr. Frank Finger. He has a relationship with the VOTEC school in his community, and he has gone to that VOTEC school, introduced himself to the welding teacher there, and asked that welding teacher to please keep an eye out for good talent for me, that I would be interested in letting them do their apprenticeship while they're going to school. The students are required to do so much, on the job training along with where they're, going to the VOTEC. And he's told me he's been able to develop this relationship with his vocational school, with the welding program, and he's gotten some great recruits out of it. But even more so than just going to that vocational school, it might be trying to set up a meeting to meet with the guidance counselors at the high schools and saying, hey, not all of your kids want to go to college. Here's an opportunity if they have any amount of aptitude or ambition to work with their hands. Could you please let me know? I'd be willing to meet them, and you could use me as a resource for maybe some of your students who aren't college bound. And I think that somebody said it earlier in this conversation, is we really need to get out of think out of the box here, right? Like, what can we be doing different as business people to get an influx of people? And I think we've heard with some really interesting things today. I'd just like to point out a couple more things. Jamie brought this up, and that's providing advancement for people. I think this is very important, doing what you say you're going to do. I read something remarkable, though, the other day. It said that right now, 67% or 60 some percent, I don't know if it's 63, 67% of the workers in the market, in the workforce, the ones that they polled, and I forget how many were in this poll, but like I said, over 60% of them are looking for a new job. And the one thing they listed as the main reason for looking for a different job was their manager. They didn't feel as though that manager should be managing. They didn't feel that that manager was a good manager or treated them well. So something was missing in management. And I think that goes back to what Jamie was talking about having that process, right? Having those processes in place, because if you have that culture and you have those processes, everybody knows, even somebody who's not a manager, but you have them in a management position, if they know what the culture of that organization is, they know what those processes are, then you don't really have to manage people if they know what the expectation for them is. So it goes back to, we have to create relationships with young people somehow or another, either through the schools, through vocational schools, the vocational technical schools, either through other, training type of schools. I mean, there's diesel schools. We have to get out there and promote our company to future employees, like we're promoting our company to our customers. And I think that's very important. Okay, a wrap up. Bobby, give me, a 1 minute wrap up here, because I know we're running out of time.
No worries. What's particularly poignant here is, and Mark, we've talked about this for years, and with Wayne, is processes, just like you said. And I read this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he says you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your processes. And I tell that to my team all the time. It's like, yeah, you know what? If we get a big giant order, yeah, we could work a ton of overtime and come in on Saturday, come in on Sunday, do what we got to do, but that's unsustainable. And if you want to keep a high level of quality, you're going to fall back on your processes. And I think small businesses have never been effective with processes for training. Yeah, we've been effective for processes for quality and how we send out a job and how we invoice and we do all that. But as far as recruiting, I think that's something that we all need to improve on, and including myself. And so it's just become more real over the last couple of years.
Aaron, final comments.
Yeah, this has been great. There is a ton of talent out there. Folks may not see it, but there are folks out there who are willing to work, ready to work if you give them that opportunity. So a big takeaway here, I want to wrap it up quick. If you can, identify revenue generating tasks, small basic ones that can help move the needle forward, and build that together as your training program in-house. Nothing fancy, nothing there. Find people with the right attitude and aptitude and give them the shot to carry out those tests and grow into someone that is going to be a long-term employee. That would be an action item that I can give to you all that I think would help.
Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate it. Jamie, last but not least.
There's an old expression that sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. And so having an outside perspective from someone that can help you to see new opportunities can be very, very beneficial. And so people who, like myself, who work in a consulting capacity, we have that unique ability to be able to see things that you can't see simply because we're not in it with you every day. So we're going to ask some questions and come at it from a different angle. So if you're feeling stuck and you really want to kickstart this, then reach out to someone who you trust, who can provide you with that outside perspective. And if that someone is me one day, I would be happy to help. But it doesn't have to be me. It can just be someone who can really help you see it from a different perspective. I think that's important.
So that's going to wind us up for today. I just want to let everyone know that if you have any comments or questions for anybody on this panel, you can contact NARSA, but you can take a picture of the screen. There's all of our there's all the information for our guests today. And once again, thank you, gentlemen. We want to let you know that all of our past presentations are on our website. And I believe that everybody that's on this webinar today is a NARSA member. You have access to this. I don't have to push membership because you already belong, know the value of it. But I speak to people almost on a weekly basis who don't know that our past presentations, these past webinars, are on our website and they can be viewed anytime. So please look at our website, go to these past presentations, take advantage of this. Let the people that work with you also glean from this information that is here. And it's great because it's 24/7. The one last thing I'd like to do is once again thank Johnson Manufacturing for being our sponsor. Without our sponsors, we couldn't do things like this, and NARSA wouldn't exist. So thanks to Johnson. That's all I have. We'll see you next time, I guess.